We continued our discussion, focusing on Maimonides' 8 levels in the hierarchy of charity and finding out that actually charity is a misnomer. That is not the real word. In the biblical holy tongue, it means justice. What we're doing isn't charity. We're doing justice. Why is it justice? What's the justice? Well, let's find out. Whose money is it that we're distributing and the justice involved? Stay tuned.
Right.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Anyone else? Any other ideas? I was thinking maybe just like keeping, even now with whatever money you have, really living, like Rachel was saying, maybe living a more modest life than you could. And it's already like really putting in place the idea that it's not like whatever money I have, I need to spend, I need to flaunt, I need to use, I need to run after, I need something bigger, I need something fancier, I need something nicer. But already like detaching yourself, like it's not so important. God gave me money. I'm training myself to just give it away, give it to others. Again, that doesn't mean your needs shouldn't be met, but not that becomes how I define myself, but rather helping others and the deep satisfaction in being there for others. That's already how I look at my money. I think sort of like what Rivka's saying, the more you train yourself how to do it now with whatever you have, then it helps you as God gives you more and more wealth to be still maintaining that same perspective and not lose yourself in the process. Maimonides says there are 8 levels of giving charity. The lowest level is you give charity, but unwillingly. You don't really want to give, but you listen to God, so you give. Because when you give charity unwillingly, the other person feels like that's very hurtful. The next level higher than that is you're not giving 100% what the other person needs. So maybe the person comes to you and they still leave somewhat hungry, or their need wasn't met. But whatever little you're giving gladly. You're giving with a smile. So giving gladly with a smile inadequately is far better than giving 100% begrudgingly. It's a very strong lesson Maimonides is saying there. Again, that might not be relevant if you put your money in a charity box, as we discussed at length last week, or you're writing a check, but when it actually comes to giving people directly, this is very significant. Higher than that is person who always gives, but only after they're asked, because even higher than that is giving before you're being asked. You see a need and you respond to the need. You don't wait to be asked. But here, the limitation here is that you're giving it directly to that person, because if you give directly to that person, the person could be embarrassed. So even higher than that, the 5th level, and this is what the sages would do, is give so you don't know who you gave to. The poor know who they got it from, but you don't know how. And the sages, very creatively, what they would do is they would tie coins, like attach it to strings on their robes that were behind their back. So they're walking, and behind their back are like attached to their robe a string with a coin tied to it. So a poor person comes up, this was the idea, the person will come up and take the coin, like picking it off their robes. And the sage had no clue who took those coins. So the poor person doesn't have to be embarrassed afterwards if he sees this rabbi on the street. He doesn't know he took his charity. He doesn't know he's taking his money. He doesn't know who he's giving money to. He's giving behind his back. So that's considered very, very good, that the person doesn't have to be embarrassed in front of you because they don't know. They know that you don't know that you gave it to them. Higher than this is, you know who you're giving it to, but the poor doesn't know who's giving it to him. And sages would do this also. They would go about secretly. They would put coins in the doors of poor people. Higher than that is, on both ends, you don't know. You don't know who you're giving it to, and the poor doesn't know who they got it from, which of course nowadays is very common. If there's a charity fund and you're contributing money to a charity fund, and then that fund gets distributed to poor people, well, you don't know who you're giving it to, and they don't know who they got it from. So as long as the people in charge are trustworthy, honest people, that's a very good way to give charity. And the greatest way, which I think is a very important lesson, the greatest way to give charity is to give a loan, a partnership, a job, to do something that the other person can be independent and no longer needs to be dependent on charity. That is the best way to give charity. Did anyone here ever have that merit, that they were able to do that for someone else? That they were able to help a person get on their feet, give them a training, give them money to start a business, direct them to a job. It's not always money. You can just make a connection. That anyone ever had that merit? Because that is the best gift of charity one could ever do. Did anyone here ever see a direct blessing in their life that they connected to giving charity? We spoke before about the guarantee, absolute guarantee of money, and I see that every day in my life. But did anyone here ever see like a linear connection that they gave charity and then they saw a blessing happen that they associated with the charity they gave?
I think I just mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago, he downsized and let go of so many people.
Yes, you said that at your work.
And really many people. And it's really a miracle, even though they cut back on my pay, but still I'm not only running half of the country, I'm running now the entire country, the homestay. Wow. And I'm on a salary. And really,
so they doubled your work and they cut your salary?
Well, they cut my salary, but I think it's going to be for a short while, because after they see my performance, I think that will change. I agree to take a cut, because they had to cut back, but I retained my position, and I do believe that it is because of what we're doing, what we're giving.
I can definitely say my father
I believe
had
that wants me to continue and help the people.
I can definitely say my father was a scientist. And when he finished his, at least a certain amount of his studies, and when he needed to go to work, this is like the mid-60s in America. And my father looked and was overtly very religious Hasidic Jew with a beard and a big yarmulke, and, all the works. He looked like a rabbi. And he's trying to get a job as a scientist, and nobody would hire him because people were very, not so warm and open to that. So he was in the end hired by the government, which he didn't want to go because obviously the government pays less than everyone else. But basically the person that hired him said, I'm hiring you because there are anti-discrimination laws. And as such, I can't discriminate against you. I mean, we're the government, but I'm warning you. He told him this straight out. He said, I'm warning you, you will never get promoted. You're getting an entry-level position and you will never get promoted, because we don't really like people like you. But, we had no choice, but we're never going to promote you. My father had actually no choice because no one else was giving him a job at all. So he took this very low salary job, entry-level position with the government in his field in science. And I mean, unfortunately, my father passed away very young, but over his some 30 years of working there before he passed away, he was promoted and promoted and promoted and promoted. And in the end, he actually ran his own think tank that he created for the government. He was very, very, very high in the totem pole. And I felt that it was because he gave so much charity. My father was very, very, very strong in giving charity. And I felt so God-like, he's given all this charity. God has to create all this money, but he doesn't have stocks, he's not a business person. His only source of income is his salary. So God has to keep promoting him and promoting him so his salary can grow and grow, can measure it with all the charity he was giving. So I experienced that very strongly when I was growing up, really seeing so clearly the blessing with charity. I actually had once a situation with a high school when we needed money for a down payment for our dormitory building. And we were like sort of stuck, like we needed to come up with this money, like it was like a matter of days and we just did not have the money. And I had tried to fundraise and I was not successful. We did not have the money. And I wrote into the Lord's Road for a blessing, and the answer I got, the only thing I saw talking about was giving charity. And I'm like, I don't know. I think the Rebbe is saying we have to give charity and that will create the money. So I had at that time a certain amount of money put aside that I needed to buy a car because my car had died and I just hadn't gotten the car yet, whatever certain technical reasons, but I have a certain amount of money aside for that car. And I said, okay, God, I'm giving this money to charity. And I did. And literally within days, because we only had a few days left, all the money we needed for the down payment came in. It was not proportionate to the amount of charity I gave. I just felt the Rebbe was saying, you give the charity and this will open up the blessings. And it did. And it was like miraculous. It was also, P.S., miraculous that someone like literally that night donated a car to the high school. So like suddenly I actually had a car. That was like another, cherry on the cake, so to speak, miracle there. But it was just so clear that gave the charity. And then like suddenly all this money came in for the building. So definitely, I don't know if anyone else here has seen, but I definitely have experienced many times the tremendous power of charity in creating so many salvations. Now, if you're giving the charity, you're saying, well, I'm giving charity so someone should get better, or I'm giving charity that this person should come out of jail, or I'm giving charity that this person should find their soulmate. That the charity still creates money, meaning both happen. Charity always creates money, and you could give the charity for the person to get married, for the person to get a job, for the person to get well, for all those things at the same time. Now, obviously, if you're giving charity, you and your husband sort of need to be on the same page, unless, of course, it's your own money and not his money. So there's no conflicts there, but it's very, very important. But we're told that women can give charity in a way men can, because women can give food. You can prepare food for people. You can make meals for people. You could buy food as you're anyway buying food, buy food for people. And you can create an atmosphere in your home that your husband becomes more and more open, more and more willing to give charity. Now we're told that charity is like a sacrifice offered on the altar of the temple, meaning just like in the temple, they would offer one animal, and that elevated the entire animal kingdom. They would offer a handful of flour. That elevated all the vegetation. So too, when you offer your money on the altar of charity, it elevates all your money, as we explained, and this percentage comes from the whole. And again, this is charity to any Jew who's destitute, to any Torah institution, a synagogue, any school, boys and girls, elementary, high school, post-high school, mikvah, to help anyone do a mitzvah. It was interesting, like last week, Menucha said, well, if she wants to pay for herself to go to a spiritual weekend, a Pagisha weekend, I said, no. But then afterwards, I wanted to say, but if you're paying for someone else who otherwise wouldn't go, of course, that's charity. Because anytime you're going to help someone else do a mitzvah, that definitely use charity money for. Any social service organization that's helping Jews, all of that list is all charity. So actually, as someone mentioned, I think 2 weeks ago, I think Rachel mentioned it, or maybe Rachel mentioned it, that the Lavav explains that in Hebrew, I keep using the English word charity because we're speaking English in this class, but charity is not really the correct translation for the Hebrew term for charity, because Hebrew term for charity is tzedakah. Tzedakah does not really translate as charity. Tzedakah translates as justice. And there's a very important point there. What's the justice in our charity? Because a person has to understand, it is very important for us to all remember, because hopefully we're all going to give charity, we're going to give more charity, and we're going to be so excited to give charity. And we should know the justice in it. The justice in it is, it's not because I'm such a nice person. It's not because I'm so charitable. This is justice. The money we give to charity is not ours. God is using us as his messenger to distribute to others. We're blessed that God trusts us and chooses us as his representatives. So when I give, I'm not being so charitable. I'm doing justice. It's not my money in the first place. There's a story of a wealthy follower of a Hasidic Rebbe named Reb Aram Yoshua Heschel of Apt. And once this Rebbe, this Hasidic leader, sent a letter to this wealthy follower of his, asking him to give a large sum of money, 200 rubles, to help another poor person. And this wealthy person, this wealthy follower, was very generous and always followed his Rebbe's instructions and gave a lot of charity. But this letter arrived at like not such a good time for him. It was very financially inconvenient, and it was a very large sum of money for just to give a poor person 200 rubles. That was a lot of money. And he didn't listen. And he didn't give him the 200 rubles. And shortly afterwards, basically to make a long story short, or make a long story shorter, he lost all of his money. He lost everything. Now this man was like, this is not fair. What's going on? I mean, I know what I did wrong, but because of that, I lose everything. And he went to his Rebbe to complain. He said, Rebbe, I know why this happened. I didn't get the 200 rubles, but was my sin so terrible? I should get such a severe punishment? You punished me without warning? If you told me if I don't give the 200 rubles, I will lose everything. Trust me, I would have given the 200 rubles. And the Rebbe, the Hasidic leader, said, I don't know what you're talking about. You weren't punished at all. He said, what do you mean I wasn't punished? I lost everything. Nothing that was yours was taken away from you. You see, the Rebbe, this Hasidic leader, explained to his follower, when my soul came down to this world, a certain amount of resources were allocated to me to use in my work all day, all night. I'm praying, I'm studying, I'm teaching, I'm counseling. I don't have time to manage all that money. So my resources were placed in some bankers, people that would recognize their duty to support my work. When you didn't do your job, when you failed to carry out your role, the account with you was transferred to someone else. It wasn't your money. Money that you were distributing for me to save me having to deal with. You didn't want to be a distributor of my money? No problem. God moved my account somewhere else. Very, very strong story. I don't know the end afterwards. I hope everything worked out for this person. But it's a very strong story for us to understand, not that God forbid we should have the sense of God taking away our money, but you really have the sense of, when we're giving charity, it's tzedakah, it's justice. God gave us this money for us to distribute it to others. And that's so different than the perspective of our secular world. Because in our secular world, where, there's prosperity and there's poverty. So there's like two general perspectives on wealth and property, and neither of them are Torah's. Something, well, if you earned or inherited a lot of money, it's yours. And if you choose to share even a very small part, how wonderful, how noble, how praiseworthy. That's so special of you. That's one perspective, not Torah's. Another perspective is not right, not fair. There should not be this unequal distribution of the earth's resources. If you own more than other people, that is wrong. That's not Torah's perspective either. Neither of those are Torah's perspective. Jewish tradition, Torah's perspective is giving charity is a commandment. It's a commandment and it's a good deed. This means it's not voluntary. It's not like, wow, it's so wonderful. That's so special, so special, so special. No, it's your obligation. It's your duty. But it is a good deed. And that's why there's so many blessings attached and so much salvation attached and so much creation of money attached, because it's a credit to the person who's recognizing his duty and carrying out his obligation. So we do not believe that material wealth is a crime. We believe it's a blessing from God. And if we were so blessed, we should look at ourselves as God's banker, as someone who's privileged to be entrusted by God to dispense the resources of his creations to others. And God